This video will show you how to set up the VMS3s and 4 servers with NX Witness through a web browser without actually connecting up a computer monitor and keyboard and mouse up to the actual server itself. First, you have to plug in the VMS server into the customer's network and plug your laptop into the same network or a computer on site on the same network. We open up NX client on the actual laptop itself, and you'll see that a new server will pop up in the list and showing you its IP address. Note down the IP address that it shows because we need to put that into the web browser. So in my case, I'll open up a web browser and go 192.168.0.127, port number which is :9090, and then push enter. It'll bring up the web interface to the actual server itself. The username is NX Witness, and this is the username and password to the actual server, not NX client that you've used. The password is actually written in the box that come with the server, which is actually NX Witness. Instead of putting an I, it's a 1. Click on the little tick box to reuse the password and click login. This will log into the web interface. This will show you on the system page. It'll show you what CPU usage it's currently using, how much memory it's currently using on the server, the disk, how much read-write it's actually using, the network traffic, how much network traffic is actually being passed through the server right now. It'll actually allow you to join domains if you need to, show you the system time, which you can obviously change it if you need to. You can actually go to power options. You can restart the server or shut down the server if you need to, in case you've got to do maintenance. On the left hand side, you've got logs. In the log section, you can actually choose what type of log you want to view. You can say I want to view everything about the server, which can give you a full rundown of what's happening on the server in case tech support asks for a log file. We can get that exactly from the server itself. Storage, we can actually mount and delete hard drives from the server using this. We've actually got one drive actually mounted at the moment, which has got 27.5 gig hard drive, which is running the operating system on the actual hard drive. We won't be using that for storage. I've actually added another hard drive here that we'll be using for storage. As you can see, you can get the read-write of the hard drive in case there's a lot of writing and reading from the hard drive. You can see that happening here in real time. Since we're going to add a hard drive to this server, we actually click on the hard drive that we're going to add. We've got the free space available here, so we go create a partition. The type, we need to have it as a ext4. This is because it's a Linux operating system, and we can go create partition. This will create the partition so we can actually record to it. Before we can actually record to it, we then need to then select it. We should have a drive name here. Click a little arrow. We go file system, and now we want to mount the hard drive to the server. So it's now mounted the hard drive, so we can actually use it with NX, which I'll show you shortly. On the left hand side again, we've got networking. In here we've got a way of actually modifying the IP address to the network cards. We actually have the sending and receiving of how much storage is actually, how much bandwidth is actually being used on the actual server. We've got the 2 network cards. I'm actually plugged my server into my network using network port number 1, and network port number 2 on the server is actually not plugged into anywhere. So that's the reason why I've got an IP address showing here, because I've got a network cable plugged in. If I plug the network cable into port number 2, it'll show you the other IP address. If you're going to use 2 network cards on the server, such as the main network card for your main network, which has the internet connection on it, and then you're going to use the other port for all your cameras, you actually have to go into this the second network port, click on the TCP version 4, and you've got to force an IP address in there. By default, it's actually set to DHCP automatic. So if you set it to manual, punch in the IP address of your camera network, the ones with all the cameras on the network. Ideally, it should be on a different IP address range to your main network. The subnet mask, normally 255.255.255.0, will actually come up as 24. The gateway, leave blank on the camera network side of things, and also the DNS. This way, this network port can't actually go out on the internet. It'll force it to use the other network port for the internet connection, and then we can click apply. So we can see that IP address now being put in there. You also got to enable it here. Once it's actually been a network cable has been plugged in, you can actually turn it on and off if you need to. With the other network port, which has got the main network with the internet connection on it, by default it will say automatic DHCP. We can actually change that to be a manual if you wanted to force an IP address in there. Just make sure you put a gateway and DNS server in there. Since this is the one with the internet connection, you don't want to leave them blank. You want to actually fill something in, unlike the other network port that we just viewed. We want to remove them because it's going to use that as the internet connection and the server will get confused. Under the left hand side, again, we've got accounts. This is the username and password that you can actually log into the server with. Obviously leave them blank because we're not actually, or leave them as default I should say, because we're not actually going to be logging into the actual server. It's only when we have to log in, like now we have to log in, so we don't have to create user accounts. Services currently running on the actual server. Normally we just leave that as default. Applications, there shouldn't be anything installed that should pop up in this list, because we shouldn't be installing anything on the server. Since it's a CCTV server, we don't want to install programs. Software updates, we can do software updates over the network. And terminal, we can actually run command prompt on the actual server. So on your computer, you normally open up command prompt and you can do things on there. Well, we can actually do it through the web browser, through this terminal, which will actually send the command to the NX server itself, and you can run commands on there if you need to. On the left hand side, you got under dashboard. It's similar to the dashboard that we saw before. You can actually see how much memory and CPU and network it is currently using on this server. Which is pretty much similar to what you're seeing here. The longer you leave the web browser logged in, the more data you get to see. If you close the web browser, it starts again from the start to see the diagnostics of how much it's using. You can't scroll backwards or forwards, it's in real time. So now that we've got our hard drive mounted and we've set up what we need with the networking, we can actually go back to our NX client and we can actually log into our client. We want to set it up as a new system. We'll leave the name as default and click next. Password, we'll just put in our password that we want to use for this server. And we click on next. The server is now ready, we go finish. Now we're logged into NX client, so we can actually right mouse click on our server and go server settings. In here we go to the storage management tab We can see our first hard drive, which has the operating system. Since we don't want to record onto that, we will turn that off. And since we want to record onto this one, we can actually turn that on. And we click on apply. So now all our servers storage is going to be recording onto our 1 terabyte drive that we just added in the web browser. And our reserve one here is our operating system, so we're not going to record onto that at all. We've now added our hard drive to the NX, and we've also mounted it to the operating system.